All right, it is time for us to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Bohannon. I'm an Education and Outreach Liaison with Okie 811. And today we're talking about understanding tolerance zones and safe digging practices within those zones. Should you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to post them in the chat and QA. That way we can go ahead and get them answered punctually. Now, let's go ahead and look at what we will be covering today. So, here's our overview. And first, we'll be looking at the legal definition of tolerant zones. Next, we'll cover a bit of what that looks like from the locating side, just to give a little bit more context. Following that, we'll take a look into what to do in those tolerant zones, discussing more about safe digging in those zones and some examples of soft digging. Finally, we'll end with more of what Okie 811's resources are around that subject. So, looking at the legal definition of the tolerance zone, and according to the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act, it is to enable the excavator to employ hand-dug test holes to determine the precise location of the underground facilities in advance of excavation. For the purpose of this act, the approximate location of the underground facilities shall be defined as a strip of land 2 feet on either side of such underground utility. To put it simply, it's not just a best practice to observe those 2 feet on either side of a utility marking, it is the law, especially since it is focused on the legal writing, that clearance of the utility itself. Should you like to review the law, you may look up Title 63. This is the Public Health and Safety title, Section 142, and that will be the Oklahoma Underground Damage Prevention Act. Now, as we know, locating is not a perfect science. There are a variety of factors that can affect the accuracy of locating those lines, including equipment, weather, the environment, human error. There's a variety of things that can affect locating those underground facilities. So maps don't always give perfect information. Some companies might remove assets without updating maps, or erosion and weather events can change the locations of those lines. So it's best, as always, to have that in your mind. It is not an exact location, depth, or position of a utility when the marking is there. It is never guaranteed that it will be within that perfect area. So, thus, it is important to follow the rules of the tolerance zone within a given area. So what does that look like, per se? What do we do in those tolerance zones? What are those rules? Again, remember that the marks are a guide. It's not an answer. Respect the given area of the markings, the 24 inches, 2 feet each side, and use that as your guide. Respect those marks if you need to work around those utilities. When working in the tolerance zone, it is very important to take your time and not to rush. It's easy to make mistakes when we hurry a project and when we push things too fast. So it is important to take your time within that area. It's a great practice to communicate all of that with a team. Have a toolbox talk before excavating and let them know about the tolerance zone and what to look for. What is in that area? Are there obstacles in the area? Is there debris in the area? Is weather affecting where those marks are and if you can see them? Always confirm that the utility marks and the positive response have the same information. Make sure that what is written and what is physical reflect each other. If the markings don't match, it is important to contact Okie 811 immediately, and that way we can communicate with the utility operator to come out and observe that area. Now, always, always, always within the tolerance zone, use soft digging techniques. That is within the law, but 2 feet of that utility, not to use mechanized equipment. Now, There are a variety of soft digging techniques here. And here are some examples of what that would look like. So, potholing. This is using hand tools to dig holes for exposing utilities within the tolerance zone. They are points of which you are digging a hole to confirm that location if you're working around it. Hand digging is very similar. It is also using hand tools. This is excavating near and around the utilities within the tolerance zone. Consider that more of your lines. It's a linear excavation. You're going to be using things such as shovels or hand trowels to expose those utilities within a line. So potholing is just a dot. Hand digging is more of a linear path. Hydrovacking, which is coming up onto the scene, it's becoming quite a new shining method. It's a method that uses pressurized water to excavate a specific area. Now, it is important to exercise caution with using hydrovacking, as it can strip certain utilities of their protective coatings. And so it's always good to double check with the utility operators what is going to be a good practice there, or anyone who has the hydrovacking systems. Now, if there are any questions about soft digging, or if there are any questions revolving around what's going to be a better practice to use in certain tolerance zones in that environment, you can always reach out to education@okie811.org for more information, and we'll be able to provide more resources regarding soft digging techniques within the tolerance zone. So we'll go over a couple of examples of working in tolerance zones and some scenarios of what different elements can look like. And so here's a graphic for what you might imagine the tolerance zone to appear like in the wild, in a sense. This is a good graphic to grasp the 2 feet on either side of that utility. And you can see the 24 inches defined there, as well as the linear path above, which are the utility markings. Now, consider this. A team is installing a fence, and as it's being installed, it's within a foot of the marks. They started to install it without soft digging. Utilities get a true vision of where those utilities are. They struck a gas line approximately 18 inches away from the initial marks. They did not expose the lines, and they were working within the tolerance zone. Understanding where those lines are is very important to avoid any kinds of strikes. Here's another example. So another team is trenching to install fiber lines. They practice soft digging, expose the utility directly under the marks, and they maintain soft digging and did not use heavy equipment around the tolerance zone. As such, they did not have any strikes. So being able to expose those utilities, visualize, having the concept of my lines might be running next to theirs, and having space to differentiate that. And then I have one more here. So you're considering a landscaper. There was a landscaper that was using hand tools in the tolerance zone, looking to install an irrigation system. And he found that the electric line was about 20 feet. And this is why it is very important to acknowledge the tolerance zone having those 2 feet on either side of markings or utility itself, because those marks, again, it's not an exact science when it comes to locating. And so those lines may be shifted in other areas due to weather, erosion, etc. Now, a little bit more info. Some resources that Oki has. We have a variety of tools and resources to support safe excavation for your project. However, we do not mark or locate lines, nor do we enforce the law. The marking and locating lines is the utility operator's responsibility. It is the Oklahoma Corporation Commission's responsibility to enforce the law. We are the communication hub. We have multiple safety days. Those trainings are all over the state. It's a full day of training. It is an opportunity to get DEQs as well as learn more about the tolerance zone, safe practices from a variety of perspectives. We have excavator guides that also provide information about safe excavation, best practices, how you can define that tolerance zone. It gives great references for that, as well as markings. We have our online portal and ticketing systems, which are a great way to keep track of that positive response and be able to compare what has been given written versus what is physical on site, which is also important for maintaining that tolerance zone and knowing where you're digging. And of course, never guess, never assume. If a utility is found outside of the tolerance zone, or if the utility line is not within the tolerance zone as you're digging through, contact OK 811 and the utility operator, and the utility operator should be able to come out promptly and observe those lines, and we can get a greater report on that. It is very important for your safety to never guess and never assume with lines and the tolerance zone. And of course, within our resources, following the safety days, we have our Oklahoma Excavation Safety Expo coming up here April 1st and 2nd. And this will be hosted at Metro Tech Spring Lake campus. It is a wonderful opportunity to network with operators, but industry regarding safety, and there will be a couple of different exhibitors that will have some great insight for working within tolerance zones and how those different utilities may require different levels of care. And so it would be a great opportunity to gain some more information regarding working in those tolerance zones and how to safely dig around in them. We are also providing Spanish excavation safety certification, and we'll have some Spanish safety days coming up as well. I know we're already at the review for this webinar. It was a pretty quick webinar, pretty to the point, but here's a little review of what we've talked about. We discussed tolerance zones and their legal definition, legally defined as a strip of land 2 feet on either side of such underground utility. We looked at a variety of safe digging options within the tolerance zone, such as potholing or hand digging using hydrovac, and not rushing. Not rushing saves lives and prevents damages. So being sure that you are taking time to schedule out your project and review the steps that are needed to go through with that, and being sure that everything has a timeline and is being documented. And of course, we concluded with some extra resources that Oki 811 has. We have a variety of things, again, like our excavator guides, our online portal. We have virtual training. So if you have any questions about that, of course, you can always reach out to education@oki811.org. Now, with all of that being said, I want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here with us. If you wouldn't mind, please take just a moment to scan the QR code, give us some feedback on the webinar. We would love to know more about how we can make these webinars best for you. Additionally, completing this survey will have you entered into a raffle for the chance at an Amazon gift card at the end of the month. Perfect. Well, thank you also very much for joining us today. And I hope that you continue to dig smart and dig safe. Anytime that you plan to excavate, please contact Okie 811. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday.